All right. Hello. Hello, everybody. Tessa?
Hello, hello.
There we go. There we go. I'm just going to go on this brief spiel. Uh, and I'm going to be brief with my introduction, a little bit considering we have a bit to work with within a um, kind of hard cap time. So hello everyone, and welcome to the Sir. This is an interview podcast. I interview VTubers, big and small, using methodologies found in oral history to maintain chronology, narrative, and ethics. We will try to work with a. My apologies. We will try to work in a segment where the community can ask Tessa questions directly, insofar time allows. If you want to be interviewed, my email is down in the description below, alongside our guests' social media to qualify, to have a model, experience in content creation, and I suppose that's pretty much all I need to say. So Tessa, hello,
Yeah,
hello, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Recently got over some kind of weird sickness where I had stayed up till like 5 in the morning and fucked up with melatonin pills, and then apparently you're only supposed to take it when you first have your first REM cycle before the second one, and I like had like a stomach ache issue. Now it's all better. I'm feeling absolutely cherry. Now that the holidays are here, I'm starting to ramp up how busy I am and just
Hmm.
caught up with like everything, and so like, everything moves on.
Hmm. Well, how's the weather?
Is that your icebreaker?
Oh, there's
So, how's
there's
the weather?
others. Yeah. Had a decent
Oh,
breakfast?
I didn't see. That's where you're wrong. I didn't even eat breakfast. I literally woke
Oh.
up like an hour ago. Um, so the weather, it's nice. I experienced 4 seasons, so I can't complain.
Mm-hmm. Has Yumi received her 5-hour energy shot yet?
My girlfriend, yes, she does it
Yes,
once every morning.
once every morning. So that's the source of her perpetual zoomies. Hmm?
Yes, the perpetual zoomies is fueled by rogue energy, and literally we had it set up so that her discount code is literally Yumi juices,
Yum. Um,
and the flavor that she uses is literally Skittle flavored. So
Skittle flavor. Wait, they come in Skittle flavor now?
yeah,
Oh wow, I
it's
didn't
not
know
my
that.
favorite.
I assume it's like, is it like fruit punch?
No, it's literally like drinking Skittles.
I might actually, I might actually like that. Besides the like default flavors. Hmm.
I'll DM you a link later.
Enough about me then. Let's introduce yourself. Um, who are you? What do you do? Pronouns
Well,
and plans as a content creator.
okay, so pronouns are she, her. My name is Tessa,
Mm-hmm.
and I am a VTuber manager, as well as, so basically a talent manager who also puts on a lot of different hats, such as project management, talent management. I also do some film production, especially with Yumi, who does VR cinematography, and um, I review people's VODs and videos, and all sort. And I'm a brand manager, and I just do a lot of different work. And if you called me a producer, if you called me a manager, both would be true.
Mm-hmm. VR cinematography, you mentioned?
Yeah, so in VR, if you utilize different toolkits, you can actually move around the camera and have all sorts of different camera settings. So it can get
Mm-hmm.
you can actually create very interesting videos out of that. And so I work with her to create skits right now, and we're planning on more in the future. And I also work with Just regular videos and stuff to try to help incorporate storytelling elements into people's just normal YouTube videos.
Mm-hmm. Would you consider yourself a a machinima maker?
What does that mean?
Machinima, as in like a video game.
I remember that, but I don't think
Mhm.
I understand what you mean. You mean like how they did red versus blue?
Pretty much, yeah.
I'm not quite at that level yet, but it would be really interesting to see it get to that level.
Mm-hmm.
I more help improve people's videos and help them perform better by actually like creatively giving input to help stuff like pacing, incorporate film film 101 type of stuff, like increasing the pacing and doing all this
Mm-hmm.
other really nice stuff to actually make videos more watchable.
All right. Sounds interesting. You definitely have a producer's hat.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Mm. Is it tall?
You see, I respect people who wear many hats, and so I literally respect people who wear hats upon hats. So
Mm.
I literally stack my hats.
Mm-hmm. Nice, nice. So let's go back before 2020, where VTubers got a pretty big boon of attention. Correct me as I go. You were putting out anime or anime adjacent content since like 2010, or at least doing so during high school. Yes.
Yeah, so I got my start with conventions actually. I was in high school, and my whole thing was doing smaller conventions, the stuff that you'd see anywhere locally first,
Mm-hmm.
and then for me, I had been focusing on um, doing panels about animes that were simulcasting every season and just discussing that with an audience, a live audience. And I don't know, it just all came so naturally to me because I also did like workshops and stuff, um, especially about like card games as well. That I used to be really, really good at Yu-Gi-Oh, and so I would host Yu-Gi-Oh workshops at conventions, and also I did other kind of workshops with different cosplayers that I knew, and the rest is history. Like I started networking a lot more from that, and I basically just got really used to convention culture, and I kind of got a very natural following from that
Mm-hmm.
for 4 years of doing all of that, and people were asking me, this is back in 2014. People were actually using Facebook back then. And so I had been asked to make a Facebook page where they could get more of this stuff rather than periodically. And so I tried doing, well, it was 2013 and
mm-hmm.
I had my first Facebook page and it failed. It was awful. And then 2014 I started doing that, but just the reviews were not enough. And so I literally relied on memes and shitposting to
Mm-hmm.
really take things off. And as a result of mixing the two together, I had gotten my first 10,000 followers within my first few months of opening up that Facebook page. Then it grew up to about 25,000 in the same year by the end of the year, and then it kind of stagnated because I started shifting my focus around from just doing like blog type stuff because I had already had experience doing blogs as a teenager. My own blog. I also did vlogs as a teenager. Just opening up the camera and just talking to myself, and also doing like there was like local newspapers and like those teen magazine type of things that are like really small and obscure kind of deal. that
I
you
got
used to
that.
see on forums and stuff. Yeah, I used to publish articles to those things, and that's
Ooh.
really that is like my true start. And so like moving forward from that, I started doing a podcast that I called Weeb Speak. And from that, I had a friend that also ran a Facebook page, and we just kind of got along really goddamn well. He's one of my
Mm-hmm.
best friends still. I consider him like a brother. Um, and from there, we just I started making um, my first podcast with my mods as well, and it was awful. It was very like all the audio was everywhere, and all you were looking at was a wallpaper engine and a bunch of the Discord overlay in like a call,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all you got. And visually, it was not impressive, and the audio just was kind of a nightmare. And but you there's a saying that I have when I'm working with clients when they're especially when they're starting. You kind of have to make bad stuff to make good stuff, and the same goes for literally anything, especially like songwriting, especially with writing in general. Don't try to aim for your first published work to be a magnum opus.
Mm-hmm.
Aim to make shitty things first, so that way you can gain experience. You make them in bursts, and you make small projects at a time, and you build it up. And so that's what I did. And so my first podcasts were just not great. The topics we were covering were good, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, the I learned about stuff like group dynamics very early on, and I had stopped including so many people in my podcasts. And it ended up just being me and my one co-host. Um, and if we had any guests, that would be a different thing entirely. That would not have occurred until like a year later into our podcast that we started getting anime YouTubers into our podcast, as well as um, other industry connections like people who ran conventions, convention directors and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And we just it started getting better and better as time went on. um we saw more success with iTunes and Spotify than we did with YouTube at the time, because YouTube didn't have an official podcast function like it does now. But SoundCloud, all the usual podcast areas, it did pretty well there, and we established more of an audience there. And as I continued to do conventions, um, more and more people started showing up to the panels and stuff. So, like, by the time, 2016 came around, I had been filling up entire panel rooms with like, because like a maximum capacity of a
Mm-hmm.
convention room usually is like 250 to 500. It didn't matter what size they gave me, it would all be filled up. And it was because of just the reputation that I had gained from that alone. I just was really consistent with what I was doing, and people got to know me. And that is something that I hold near and dear. And as I started my education, um, for my college education, it just kind of reinforced all that experience and knowledge. It just, when you're taking marketing classes in college, they go over very basic stuff, but it all just kind of lines up exactly with how a creator's experience is, anyways. And so, um, I was always more data oriented too. And so I always wanted to see what the audiences wanted. And so I would always ask them what they wanted, as well as look at what they actually watched. And well, I early on had like a my first sponsorships. I'm not gonna say it on stream right now, because the 2010s were a very different time. Um,
Very much, yes.
like I had a grape juice that had a tentacle theme. it was grape
Grape.
flavored.
Wait, grateful. Wait.
Yeah, it was definitely a very different era for both me and, well, what people actually wanted. And so I had sponsorships like that and then Humble Bundle. Um, and so for me, I had changed a lot as a person coming around 2018. And I'm
Uh,
sure you have more questions about that.
oh, very
And we
much.
can get into that. But moving forward with that, I had stopped doing content because of mental health.
Gotcha. You said you left off at 018, right? Um, well, let's pull back a little bit. What made you jump into the line of work going to cons to interview insiders?
So conventions was always a very natural thing for me to do. I was always a very homebody because of the nature of the household. It was an abusive household, and I wanted to get out as much as I possibly could for as
Gotcha.
long as I possibly could. And so going to conventions and staying at conventions for a weekend was always something that I had saved up for because it was just a real nice safe haven for me. And so being able to do that, I I just kind of fell in love with it naturally because I felt like I had to. Sure, there's other personal issues with that, but the crux of it is it exposed me to a lot of really good things and some things not so great. And it comes with the territory of just dealing with people in general. And so I
Of
got
course.
really good at working with people and talking with audiences and crowds, both live and offline.
Mm-hmm. What was your first panel like?
Oh my god.
Take your time.
I honestly don't remember my first
Mm-hmm.
panel. No, there was like 5 people in the room. I remember that's all I remember because I have amnesia. And so
Gotcha.
with the amnesia, like a lot of things are very cloudy, but I do at least remember my first panels, and I basically had to learn very brutally that okay, I need to learn to talk to myself because there's not a lot of people here, and I got to pretend the room is full. And literally with that much, I had to gain experience real time with that. And so I did the best I could with just talking about what anime I personally was watching and what my thoughts were with it and talking about very specific tropes and stuff. It was not really well organized at first, but I was really happy and having a good time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what mattered to me at the moment.
Start from the bottom up, you know?
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Um, you mentioned your parents, or you helping with your parents with the vendor hall. Um, are you comfortable with exploring that or elaborating on that?
So they um basically with that I had a my father ran a black metal band, and
Gotcha.
also he actually drew comics as well. He was actually admittedly quite good at it. And I basically helped my parents time to time with the vendor hall stuff, like setting up, actually running the booth, and also helping them with fulfillment at home. And so I got really used to the merchandise business.
Mm-hmm.
And so it also developed my sense of business at the time too. And so I I've just been surrounded by business and marketing my whole life. And so I basically got a very easy head start with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was very those were long days at the vendor hall. And so like
Mm-hmm.
you would just kind of have you ever like helped a friend with their merchandising and in the vendor hall?
Um, Not so to speak. I do remember volunteering to uh, how do I say, record sample approval by the public, if that makes sense. Our culinary arts class made two types of applesauce, and we gave samples to the public and recorded their approval.
Hey, you start from somewhere, and so
Exactly.
like you said, you start from somewhere, and so like for me, I very much like when you're doing the whole vendor hall thing, you're very it's very difficult because you can't exactly use the restroom. You can't exactly go get things to eat. So like you have to prepare things ahead of time and rely on like but this was all before DoorDash and stuff like that and
Mm-hmm.
Grubhub. And so you had to make a run or like order like Domino's or something. And so you would always incorporate your costs with that and you'd be lucky to break even most of the time.
Mm.
And so it's really difficult stuff, honestly. And so trying to see a teenager take care of that, it actually was not the easiest thing to deal with growing up, and I learned a lot of things the hard way. And so like for me, I have been asked by people if I would start doing merchandising for creators, and I kind of need to work myself up to it because of this personal life experience. I personally, it's just like when you're a kid, you kind of like move away from what your parents want for you and you try to explore yourself more, or
Mm-hmm.
and you just kind of try to do your own thing. And so for me, I'm not quite ready to do merchandise quite yet, even though I have
Gotcha.
experience with fulfillment and also like actually running booths and stuff. I do a great job at it. And I also learned a lot of customer service experience from that, but also like working retail and stuff. And I basically, you know, I don't think I'm personally just ready to handle all that just yet again.
Baby steps.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Um. Now, would you say your background, or at least how would I describe it? Skills that you learned through this propel you to a digital marketing degree.
It's actually interesting because at first I wanted to be a singer, and
Mm-hmm.
I had spent a lot of time in high school performing live with a guitar and with vocals. I honestly like really went out of my way to try to improve that skill set. And so like for me, I very much enjoyed music and all that stuff. And so for me, I started off college with trying to have a music degree. It had a
Mm-hmm.
specialization of vocals, and they specifically also had me basically study folk music and stuff because that was more up my alley than anything. And that didn't really go so well. I had mental breakdowns because I didn't exactly um, know what my mental health issues were, and I was overwhelmed by the workload.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, I flunked out of that and had to try again at a community college, um, where I met some of the best people I'll ever have in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I switched over to like I tried programming for a bit. It wasn't for me. Um, and then I tried psychology, and then I started learning, you need a lot to actually become a therapist. And I'm like, okay, I'm not
Yep.
going to do that. And I just kind of like, what else actually resonates with me? And so communication studies was actually the thing. And so I had gotten an associate's degree, turned around my GPA and career, academic career, and I had like a 1.0 GPA at the time, and by the
Uh,
time I had finished community college, it shot up to like a 3.5,
Awesome.
because I found something that actually worked for me, and so and I had learned a lot from that degree of like how to talk to people and how to actually handle uh, crisis better. Like when stuff in the workplace and in general, when shit goes down, you actually need to approach people differently. You need to handle business differently. There's like different context for different issues. And so I learned a lot about that. And then transferring out to is Arizona State University, I had, I definitely had struggled because it was a lot of a different environment, and I wasn't ready for that level of academic rigor quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
And I again flunked, and I had to take a little extra time to graduate college. And learning that was very interesting because I didn't know exactly what I wanted anymore, because I didn't think communication studies was for me. But then I switched over to marketing, and suddenly everything clicked with me. I started acing all of my classes. Everything started making a lot of sense. And I turned around yet again a 1.0 GPA. I graduated with a 2.99. I almost had a 3.0, but the numbers just didn't add up.
No,
And
no, I feel that. I feel that. No, I'm not trying to wave my GPA around. I got a 3.98 after my graduate course, after my graduate degree, and I kind of
it's
yeah,
hard. It's hard.
it's hard. It's disappointing, but
The way that weighted averages
numbers.
work is just kind of brutal. And
Yeah.
so, for me personally, I did my damn best, and I had stopped making content around that time in 2018. When I actually started getting serious about school, like really serious, and
Mm,
because oftentimes you'll just be on autopilot for most of your life, right? And so you're like, I'm not sure what I'm doing. I'm just gonna go through the motions, do my
mm,
homework, and it was kind of like the first time that I actually was like, I'm gonna go out of my way to actually give a shit about this stuff. And so for me, I was like, okay, marketing. This is it. This is what I want to do. This
mm,
resonates with me the most, and I already like doing content creation. And so it just kind of all worked out. And so for me, I was like, I'm having fun doing a lot of the content. I'm getting bigger and bigger guests as I go, but I don't think I could keep this up for much longer and try to keep up with the workload of the classes. And so I wanted to take my coursework much more seriously. And so I had basically taken a hiatus because my mental health was also so bad that
mm.
with my panic attacks, I was falling to the ground during exams.
Gotcha.
And, yeah, it was bad. And so I started going to therapy and got officially diagnosed with clinical depression, dysthymia, which is like a passive simmering depression that never goes away. Um,
That's a
I got
that's a new word I'm not familiar with.
dysthymia, and so when you actually
Dysthymia.
get those episodes of depression, it's called double depression. And so like I've had to live with that my entire life, and I didn't even know it. And so like I also got diagnosed with gender dysphoria too, and I had already um suspected being trans and stuff, but for me, I never actually followed through with it. And there's a lot of reasons I don't want to dive too deep into, but like I know something needed to change because my mental health was shit. Never
Mm,
mind, the depressing aspect of an abusive household, but there was other things that prevented me from doing well in school. And so the college offered free therapy, and
mm,
good lord, I took advantage of that. And they also put me into like a student success program, They called it Trio, and they provided free tutoring, a free lounge even after the school closed. They'll just wait for you to finish up your homework, and you could just go home
Mm.
when you're needing to. And they had gigabit internet, and really they had snacks and even like full on meal vouchers and stuff. And so like I I took full advantage of all of that, and they helped me with an academic success plan. And I'm like, if I had this early on, I would have done a lot better. And that's when stuff started clicking with me. I'm like, wait a second. If I actually help people with this knowledge I've gained in this kind of capacity to help prevent that kind of growing pains, everyone's going to have growing pains. But for me,
Mm.
I was like, if I can look at content creation and new content creators, I can help them with this kind of stuff, and with my own experience with my own psyche and working with therapy for so rigorously long, I could help people actually help discover themselves, because I had learned, content creation and building an audience, it really revolves around you. And so like I had figured that out very early on, that, a lot of the people who were surrounding me looked like me, looked a lot like me, not literally, but like the type of people who would congregate around me thought similar to me, had very similar tastes in anime, had very similar worldviews as well. And so for me, um, when I had changed as a person, they weren't changing. And so I had what is called an audience rebellion. I didn't see eye to eye with a lot of my audience. And when I came out as trans, a lot of them actually almost doxed me. Like they were not happy with me.
Lovely.
And yeah, it was kind of traumatizing, and that's probably when I first started getting social anxiety. Um and that was around 2018 as well. My mental health was not doing well, and so I needed to really focus on it. And so I was like, I'm addicted to social media. I'm depressed as hell. I want to focus on school. So I just kind of went on a hiatus,
Mm.
and I stopped doing content. I stopped posting on Facebook. I just focused on school and enjoying my friends around me. And that was that. I needed that for myself at the time. And when I graduated, it was very difficult because I also was doing an internship at a now defunct anime blog called Go Boyano. I made them grow pretty damn quick at the time. It was a very different era. You could post a bunch of memes and grow really
Mm.
quickly. It's just not the same anymore. Um, and for
That
me,
was 2016, right? And you interned
yeah,
there?
yeah, I
Mm.
had interned there, and um, I made them grow very quickly on Facebook and Twitter, and helped lead the teams there.
Mm.
Um, and they went on to they stopped doing anime blogging because they were caught with plagiarism.
Gotcha.
Not nothing that I was able to even handle anything. I was managing social media, not the articles. And so
How hard is
it
it to cite the sources?
not just that, but not like but to actually do original writing. And so they ended up
Ah.
making Waifu Baby, and now Waifu Baby had graduated, and I believe that saga is over for them. And so it's very interesting seeing like a different the employer that you work for kind of go down in flames like that. And it's like, okay, I can't actually use this on resumes.
Mm.
And I'm
So,
like, all right, so I'm fucked. And so
oh.
COVID comes around, and I had graduated from college finally with the digital marketing degree. I had all these different certifications from Google, HubSpot, and even my university. And I can't use any of them because at the time with COVID, employers didn't know what the fuck they wanted. And they were, oh, guess what? We're hiring internally. We had you do all of these things to apply for jobs, but we're hiring internally. Sorry.
Mm.
Or they just ghost you for the most part. And so I'm just like
Yeah,
sitting
yeah,
here,
yeah.
I'm sitting here depressed as hell. And so I start writing a light novel to get my mind off of things. And I stopped writing the light novel because I discovered VTubers.
Hmm.
It started
Um,
with Korone, actually.
Corone. Ah, Corone and this. I know the doggo.
Yes.
Yes. Um, I, we'll touch that. We'll come back to that. But could you describe what you were doing at Jiboino?
Go
Uh,
Boyano.
Goboyano. Um,
So for that, I was in charge of um, making posts for their social media. Actually, given like
uh,
permissions to post on their pages. I was I was able to figure out a lot about how social media worked during this because I was working with more resources rather than my own, and so um, I had gone out of my way to um, go above and beyond, and they just kind of let me manage the rest of the social media platforms with my colleagues at the time, and I was more or less leading the team, and
mm-hmm.
so I had learned a lot about all these different social media platforms.
All right. How long were you at the company?
Oh, it was a seasonal internships, and so
I
that
see.
was summer 2016 to winter 2016.
Oh, a whole half a year. I see. Okay. Okay. My internships. What I'm used to is my internships. Normally lasted about like 3 months or 3 to 4 months. Um, let's see. Now let's actually go back to when you would say you wanted to become a content creator, like before starting your Riken account.
So I had already had the Raycon account at the
Mm.
at the time, and so, um,
2014, if I remember, was when it was
well,
created.
no, it was actually created a lot earlier, like back in 2008.
Ah,
I very much identified strongly with how older internet culture worked at the time, and
gotcha.
enjoying the anonymity and taking on a new identity and stuff. And that's probably like one of the earlier instances of me being trans in memory. Um, I can understand it from childhood, but I can also understand during adolescence,
Mm-hmm.
where I wanted to explore femininity that way, and so that was one of the earlier signs for me. And so Raycon, I wanted that name, and in hindsight, I moved away from this. Um, so for me, I liked Raycon because it was a Japanese word for inspiration. And so that had been what I wanted to be for others, an inspiration. And so that's why I originally had the name. And um, that was the earliest that I had done it. And I originally started going into content around 2015, actually, because that's when the podcast started.
Mm-hmm. How do you view your past videos and Twitter posts?
The past videos, like I said, like the quality
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the best and the structure wasn't as good as it possibly could have been. Um, I very much cringe at my own voice back then. Because
Mm, gotcha.
I don't sound the way it's like looking at a whole different person for me.
Absolutely.
I sound a lot different than I did back then. Um, because for me, I didn't have any kind of official voice training. I just kind of worked on it on my own. And so I kind of went out of my way um, to not really mind too much about what's going on. And so looking back at that content, I don't exactly like I'm proud of all the work I put into it, but I'm not attached to it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I like
Definitely.
the direction that I'm going right now with VTubers and helping VTubers and trying to provide free public education.
Mm.
Because now, when I had graduated, this is another part of my story. I wouldn't have been Tessa had I been approved for a fellowship at Arizona State University to become a teacher. I wanted to teach social studies, politics, and geography, social studies in general.
Gotcha.
And I was approved for a full time fellowship. And COVID had dried up the funds, and I was no longer able to afford it. I had been approved for the program. I just, everything was greenlit to go, and then suddenly I couldn't do it anymore because I couldn't afford it. And so it was a whole different path. And so for me now as Tessa, I'm still an educator. I still teach people every single day. And since I believe education should be free, I want to at least provide generalized advice that people can take and use, and very basic marketing concepts and stuff like that,
Uh-huh.
and see how they can improve themselves with this free education. And that's honestly where a big passion of mine lies, is just educating others.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where my direction is now.
I assume you have a few videos already planned out.
Yeah, I do. I actually
Mm-hmm.
have, besides my own streams and splitting up the VODs, I have an intention to um, go out of my way to make an entire course, like course like work,
Mm-hmm.
um, course like content, like kind of like Crash Course in Khan Academy, but for VTubers. I have an entire outline ready to go with all the topics, and I want to start recording those at some point when I'm like more free and can incorporate that kind of production into my schedule.
Mm-hmm. Um, uh, co- Going back to your mentioning of a hiatus from your content production. Back in uh, I noticed a video discussing anxiety and gender identity in 018. You already mentioned that you did attend therapy before this point, correct?
No, that was actually the point. I started attending therapy was
Ah, I
2018.
see. Okay, okay. Um, so for the case with gender of one in many intersectionalities, how did it or does it influence your everyday life?
Um,
Especially within the 018 context.
so for me, I still wrangle with my mental health, and I try my best
Mm-hmm.
to handle it every day. And um, it does cause me to look at life a little bit differently, and like I still have a lot to improve on. And
As
so
we all.
for
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And so for me, I very much find that in terms of like gender dysphoria and my gender identity, I'm very comfortable with who I am and how I look and all that. I'm in trans circles. There is a term called passing privilege, um, that
Gotcha.
I'm fortunately blessed with, and so I do not have to worry as much as others when it comes to, um, it's in reference to quote unquote passing as
Of
cisgendered.
course.
And so for me, I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff as much. But the thing that I personally worry about is my voice. And so for me, I know I always ask people how it all sounds, because I'm usually very self conscious about it. And people assure me all the time that it's fine. And I just kind of have to believe them. Even though my brain doesn't want to, it kind of has to suck it up and just do it. And so for me, I that's something that I still struggle with a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for me, for the most part, I'm fine. Um, the mental health can like make me want to take more mental health days than usual, but other than that, it doesn't really affect my work as it
Mm-hmm.
is. I've learned to cope with different things like my autism, my ADHD, and so I just simply work a little bit differently. So like for me during meetings, if it doesn't really require my dead on attention, so like about like 25% of the time I'm able to just turn on a video game or something and stim to it. That's another
Mm-hmm.
term, stimming, where you are actively stimulating your mind with something. And for me, video games that don't require a lot of thought or attention actually do that. And interestingly enough, before the interview, um, him was him was how do you pronounce your name?
Him, whichever or.
Yeah, him was asking like, "What are you stimming to right now?" I said, "CS:GO," and he's like, "That's a doesn't that require a lot of focus?" And I'm like, "Usually, yeah, but for me, it's more mechanical." And
Mm-hmm.
so when I'm thinking and talking to people, from my understanding, different parts of the region of the brain are being used, and so for me, I am very well able to multitask at least that much. I'm usually really bad at multitasking, but this is probably one of those exceptions. Is when I'm stimming. It got me through college, and I'm not really complaining too much about it. I had gone through college, especially with like text to speech. I had to read like hundreds of pages a week, and so text to speech was often the Lord and Savior for me. So like now when I'm working with clients and I'm listening and just talking naturally like this without having to actively look at something, yeah,
Uh,
I'm very much just chilling and listening attentively, active listening and stuff like that. And so for me, I am I'm very much going out of my way to try to be as attentive as possible to people's needs. And so if they, for example, want to show me specific data or stuff, I'll put the game down and I'll focus on that because my brain is being actively stimulated. And so I don't really have much of a problem with doing my work on a day to day, even with the limitations and disability.
uh, um, I was actually drawing that on that topic. Have you ever had issues, at least in your education or at college, or even at the internship in back in 2016, um, with the with them accommodating your conditions?
So the interesting thing is that you have to request accommodations by having
Mm-hmm.
a diagnosis first. And so that's why I went to therapy was to get a I did therapy and psychiatry because for Arizona you need a psychiatrist to officially diagnose you, not a therapist. The therapist helped communicate. It was a college therapist, so they were able to help communicate to other faculty um, therapy notes because I had allowed them to share that with the HIPAA laws.
Uh,
I'd given them permission to share that information with my instructors because I wanted them to understand me better. And so accommodations were not easy. And so there was an entire department for student ambassadorship and representation from actual staff and faculty. And I had to count on them a few times to actually enforce um, disability accommodations. Um, and beyond that, it was it was pretty easy for the most part to get accommodations. It all depends on the instructor, and so they're supposed to by law give you those accommodations, especially if you're enrolled for accommodations and you mark,
uh,
hey, I'm disabled. The moment you do that, they're supposed to give you those accommodations. And so for me, I had to wait until I had been diagnosed with different things for those accommodations.
mm-hmm.
And so when I got diagnosed with ADHD, I have never been officially diagnosed with autism, but there for me with the autism stuff, I realized, there's some stuff about me that ADHD doesn't exactly make sense or cover. And I started realizing, oh shit, there's this thing called autism that I've heard about my entire life. And it looks differently for so many people. And for me, stuff started lining up. And so I kind of relied heavily on the ADHD um, diagnosis to get me through college. And now I just find different kind of ways to handle it, and I get by pretty fine for the most part. And people are very patient with me, and that's really all I can ask is just patience and
Mm.
understanding what it is I need to do to make the job get done. Usually that involves asking questions and being okay with me asking questions, but beyond that, like it doesn't really affect my job. And I thought it would at first, and it really doesn't. People don't mind. In fact, it allows people to relate to me more. Because I find a lot of VTubers are neurodivergent. A lot of VTubers have some sort of mental health issue.
Mm.
I wouldn't say like everyone, of course, but like,
Oh
uh,
no, it's definitely a demographic that is attracted to the internet subculture. Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
just think about it. Like, you don't have to use a webcam as a VTuber, and so you're able to just do any kind of bullshit you want behind the camera, um,
Exactly.
without being judged, and so you're not. It's a lot more comfortable, and so I
Exactly. I
understand
can pick
why,
my exactly. I can pick my nose in peace.
or not wear pants.
Ah.
Exactly, and so like that is what ended up happening for me was the more I embraced my mental health and neurodivergency, I had found myself um, attracting more and more neurodivergent people and people with mental health, and because they knew that I understood these issues. Even people with like BPD and even schizophrenia have come to me, and it's all perfectly fine.
Mm.
A lot of people are stigmatize schizophrenia and BPD especially, but
Yeah.
I find that it's a lot easier to work with. The main issue that I find a lot of individuals have that aren't even neurodivergent at all in any capacity would be like communicating with others and networking. That tends to
Mm.
be like the biggest issue. But even beyond that, they're perfectly normal and fine with like
Mm.
handling most stuff. Organization stuff is stuff that I often find that I have to help, and also accountability. So like making sure that people are actually doing the thing that they want to do on time and keeping projects together. That's why a lot of people come to me, especially if they have like neurodivergency or um, mental health issues.
Mm. Um. I noticed. I. 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 I do. I for a fact that I'm always coming back to the Riken account, but I noticed that you were using PNG by 08019.
Oh my god, you had reminded me about those cursed days.
Hey, I'm
Oh my
sorry.
god,
I'm sorry,
I.
Tessa, but I do my research.
Oh my god, so like back then, this was before PNG tubing was
Mm.
officially coined as a term, and I had,
Oh wait, it was your rant, Sona.
yeah, it was my Ransona essentially, and I had gone out of my way to grab a bunch of pickaroos and stitch them painstakingly together in a video editor.
Uh.
And good lord, that took so much goddamn time. And um like I have a live 2D model that doesn't really represent me anymore, and so I use a PNG tuber now.
Mm.
And with PNG tuber plus, it just really moves very naturally, and good lord, I wish this was out back in 2019 alone. And
Mm.
content creation, especially for VTubing, has come a hell of a long way, because VTubing was it apparently always was a thing even before
Oh yeah,
2020.
no,
And
undoubtedly. I think it was Iron Mouse that was like vetoing back in 2018 or something.
but
It
also
started out.
um what's her
Custom
face?
AI.
Yeah, Kuzuna AI, but also others as well. Others who are not as well known were
Mm.
VTubing back then. And Jesus Christ, all of the softwares that are out now and all of the all the assets that are out. Jesus Christ, I wish this was all available back then.
Uh,
Um, but I had to painstakingly just stitch everything together in a video editor frame by frame to make sure it all
mm.
worked out.
You also looked like you had a. Okay, it looked like you took a couple years. Uh, and then reappear with a V-Roy model in 2021. So
Right. So
let's.
I had I'd started doing that, and the reason I had dropped out of doing content was because of life situations
Of course.
and needing to focus on, dealing with the chaos of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I had also been focusing more on establishing my business as a VTuber manager and project manager and stuff like that.
Mm.
And so I was more focused on others' careers than my own. And so I
Was that
had
back in 2019 or was that after 2021?
technically it all started in
Okay.
2019, but I really got serious with it in fall 2020.
All 2020. All right. Um. Well, let's run through some of this some of these questions. When did you start hearing about VTubing? Tessa?
So for
Oh,
me,
sorry, sorry.
I everything okay?
No. You were you paused there for a moment, so don't worry.
So I had gotten wind of VTubing because of VTubing as we know it now, with Hololive with Korone, and so
Mm-hmm.
for me, I very much took a lot of inspiration from that, and VTubing looked a lot different back in 2020 than it does now. It was a lot more open, definitely a lot more chaotic, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more things that were okay then are not okay now. Um,
Could
there's
you
definitely like
give an example?
um
Hmm.
I think for that in mind, it's more in terms of like how you can post and express yourself on like Twitter, on streams. A lot of that stuff has changed as more people started realizing, streamer etiquette is actually important and we should respect each other's boundaries. That became
Uh,
an increasingly bigger focus as the years passed on. And so I had realized, okay, so if that's the case, then I need to definitely keep in mind that, okay, so I need to approach people a little bit differently as time goes on. And my beginnings with VTubing um, was more on the managerial side because of my experience with marketing and stuff.
mm-hmm.
And so I had always been depended on, and so that's just kind of what the majority of my time has been in in the VTuber scene, has just mainly been as a manager for the most part
Mm-hmm.
rather than a creator.
Um, when did you start going through the process of getting a model, at least in 2021?
So with the Vroid days, so
Mm-hmm.
basically like every asset I've ever gotten personally has been through a labor trade. And essentially,
Gotcha.
what a labor trade is like a mutual agreement of exchanging labor and services. And
Uh,
so, for me, in exchange for models and other assets, I would agree to do consultations and stuff. And so, it was a very easy one-to-one thing that I have depended upon, even for this current PNG model that I have,
mm-hmm.
and other assets I will continue to get. It's a way for me to focus my finances on other things, while also it comes in sacrifice of my time and energy, but
Uh,
it's a lot easier to stomach than um, trying to budget other things when money's already tight. And so um,
it's part of
that
a like a labor economy.
yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
so the labor, yeah, exactly. A labor economy is is definitely a very strong thing to take note of, because a lot of people are willing to do that, especially if you have something of value to offer back. And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes with artists, they do art trades. And so sometimes if you're an artist, you just don't want to draw a thing or aren't able to draw a certain thing, and or like like let's just say you're an illustrator primarily, you don't exactly know how to draw and rig a model. It's just a different thing to do entirely, and it's just different specialties. And so um, you will end up doing a trade of sorts to make sure that everything's taken care of.
On the topic of labor, do you see VTubing as work? As labor?
How do you mean?
Um, at least at least within the traditional way with streaming. Um, do you see streaming as work? Let's start off from there.
I definitely do think it's an interesting conversation, because you are juggling different interests and worldviews, because content creation is very much just as much of a job as it is a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I've asked this question a lot to people, and I think the general consensus is that um, things are a hobby until you start making a certain amount of money. So, like, if you have to worry about taxes, then I think that's a really good sign that it's definitely a job and not just a hobby.
Mm-hmm.
But in my opinion, I think it goes a little deeper than that, because for me, I feel that with a hobby, it's definitely your attitude towards it. Because, like, I have clients who are like Twitch and YouTube partners who view it more like a hobby than they do as a job. And there's some that view it more of a career than they do as a hobby. It really depends on the individual and how they feel towards it. And for me personally, when I'm turning on stream, I find it more as a hobby right now.
Uh,
Um, and me joining this collab and interview kind of thing, for me, it's a way, it feels like a hobby to me right now.
mm-hmm.
Um, Not that that's a bad thing. It can also
Yeah, of
just be
course,
a
I'm not.
career. As
Mm-hmm.
I continue to ramp up my production, it can start to become feeling like a job. But right now, it's something that helps me unwind a little bit. That, and
Mm-hmm.
I try to see it that way, because in my brain, if it's just more work, then I will only have one day off a week if I view it like that. And it doesn't feel right to do that. And so for me, I choose to go out of my way to think of streaming as a hobby,
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of like, it's weird, because it's almost like, for me personally, I'm deluding myself into thinking, oh, this is a hobby, I'm doing something fun. And as a result of me thinking that, I am then actually relaxing. And that's essentially what I want out of it.
Would you say? Would you say you are concerned of burnout?
Concerned about burnout, I'm already burnt out. I am perpetually burnt out.
Wearing
And
many
I,
hats. That's a tall collection of hats you have.
yes, and the more hats you wear, the more work you have. And um, I was just listening to some videos by Healthy Gamer GG, who's a psychiatrist who actually streams.
Uh,
And in one of his VODs, he was talking about burnout. And he was like making a whole graph about like the efforts and results. Like a on the axis was efforts, and then on the axis was results. And what essentially boiling down, I remember he was talking about essentially, there's a saying of like, if you squeeze a fruit, you want to expect juice coming out. So if the saying goes, there's not enough juice for the squeeze, that's talking about any kind of thing if it's worth it or not. And so when it comes to burnout, you start to realize, there's not enough juice coming out of this squeeze, and I'm not exactly feeling great about it. And so they very much started talking more and more about effort and yield. And so for me, um, content creation and burnout is very tricky because like if you there's like a saying of like if you love a job you'll never work a day in your life. I actually don't believe that, because you can love content creation, but if you don't see the results that you've been working so hard for, like if you put hundreds of hours into VTubing and you don't exactly get many results out of it, it can feel like you're wasting your time. And so that's where a lot of burnout comes in for a lot of people. For me in particular, I'm doing a lot of work, getting a lot of results, but I'm still working more than I get a lot more results. Even though I'm getting very positive results, my reputation is getting better. I'm getting more and more connections. I am getting a lot better actual results with clients constantly. Um, but even then, I still work more than the results that I get. And that's what results in my burnout deep down. And so for me, my short answer is okay, maybe I just need a vacation. As any job goes, you definitely need some time to rest. And so for me, I feel like I'm permanently always working at about a 20% capacity. And I wonder, okay, if I'm always working at a 20% capacity, what am I going to look like if I'm working at 100%? I cannot even fathom it. And so if the moment that happens, I don't know what's going to happen with that. And so it's weird because when you're a freelancer, you don't exactly get like paid vacations, healthcare, benefits, or anything like that, because that comes right out of your pocket. And so it's like kind of like the curse of an entrepreneur of entrepreneurship, because like you're your own boss, and so you have to put out the benefits yourself. And so like for me, if I want like to go to a convention, it's likely the budget is likely going to be 2,500. I'm going to be bringing my girlfriend with me, so the budget's actually 5 grand. And so and that's including like food and hotel and flight. And flight is honestly the biggest cost, but beyond that, like for me with a vacation, I also incorporate different things like, okay, um, I want to cover at least a month's worth of expenses for both me and my girlfriend both. And so that ends up being like above like 3 grand. And I'm like, okay, if I can get like 3,500 or 4 grand saved up, then I can feel like I qualify for a goddamn vacation. And okay, so beyond that, I'm like, okay, so if I need that much, how much more do I actually need to do a thing? So if it was a convention, that'd be an extra 5 grand on top of that 3,500. And so with the costs alone, I'm spending upwards to like $10,000 just for a vacation. And I'm just like, I know for goddamn sure I would feel the utmost relaxed if I did that. But the problem is like saving that much money is really difficult, you know?
You can always fly Spirit.
This is me looking at Google Flights and looking at the absolute cheapest flights. Like
Uh,
flying from the south all the way to California is an expensive trip. Doesn't matter.
Gotcha. No, I just remember seeing like a flight to Miami costing $44 on my where I'm at.
Okay, it can be that cheap sometimes, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a lot of prices in my region to something like California, Southern California, or San Francisco, usually and around the time of like Off-Kai Expo, usually costs around like $500 per ticket.
Yeah, I'm not gonna deny that. Yeah. I hope I'm not trying to like what's the word? What's the word? Crap, I can't really think. Um shit. Belittle. There we go. Belittle your expenses or something. No, yeah. It's stuff expensive.
Right. And so for me,
Costs money.
a lot of my goals include like raising my income,
Uh,
so that I can afford that kind of stuff and afford like actual advertising budgets for my girlfriend and myself, because trying to actually have like a 2.0 debut or a 1.0 debut at a kind of scale that I would personally want to see for myself, to see that kind of vision come off, that can
uh,
cost like 10 grand. And so that includes like getting a model, getting rigging, getting motion graphic designs, um, for like the promotional stuff, getting all sorts of different assets. It all adds up. And so for me,
mm,
I want to be able to get to the point where I can afford that. And so I just continue working. And it's kind of a curse, the position I'm in. But
yeah,
I've been doing okay for the most part.
mm,
I've been getting by, but I know that at some point I'm gonna need that vacation to
mm.
really come back at all of this pretty strong.
Um, at what time did you want to start being a manager? What made you take on the role? I understand you mentioned something about VTubers, but anything
That's a
else?
really, really good question. I remember the management role coming up because for me, I had, like you had found, that I originally had my own model, my own Vroid model.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was definitely in a very different area where I wanted to actually get back to making content. And then I just started seeing people around me asking for help. And I also had applied to a VTuber group called Lifestyle at the time. And
Ah,
instead of my application being accepted as a talent, they wanted me as a manager. They couldn't pay me at the time, and so I did it for free.
mm.
And so
Oh,
that's really well, I was just getting started out with VTubers, and I was like,
all right.
I believe in the message of this group, so I want to give it a shot.
Let's
And
refer to
so
it as an unofficial internship.
I guess that's what it was. And so um it was around that time that I very much found myself doing a lot of management work. And
Mm-hmm.
so I it just kind of fit like a glove with taking on meetings and taking on consultations around me, but also just taking care of that group. It just kind of felt really natural for me. And so it was from there I actually started my career as a manager. It wasn't just because of the group, because before the group I already had been getting asked for help, and also like taking on consultation clients and stuff like that. And so it was already a path, because I wanted some money to actually like afford luxuries during COVID, during 2020 when COVID was a lot worse. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm like, I could use some pocket change, so why not? And that's really where it started.
All right. You
It's like
wanted pocket change and then ended up working for free for a company.
right, because like
uh,
I can give the impression that like, hey, I just wanted management because I knew
mm.
it was a lucrative thing to do. In actuality, it is not a lucrative job.
Hey,
you're
hey, did you
you're
require any? Did it require any education beforehand?
what do you mean?
I don't know, some like either a tutorial video or a couple courses at a community college
Me for
of being
management?
a manager. Yes.
No, no,
No.
I had not taken any courses on doing that. This is all
Mm-hmm.
stuff I've learned from experience.
Gotcha.
And I've freshened up my skills over the years by taking different courses personally for like project management and learning different project management skills and stuff. But I I very much the majority of this is purely experience and learning things as I went. Um, I just didn't want to give the impression that I'm here specifically because I find it as a get rich quick scheme. because it's anything but that.
Oh, absolutely not.
And
Yeah.
so for me, even at first, I was just like, you know, I have this expertise going in, and I see a lot of people need help, and I've already got a lot of experience as a creator behind me. So I'm like, you know, why not?
Um, how did 2020 impact your career?
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, I could have been a public school teacher, and I could have
Mm-hmm.
been miserable with underfunded facilities. But besides that entire different trajectory, um, I very much I think that with VTubing being the way it was back in 2020, a lot of people were just stuck at home, and so um, people needed some sort of. They were very lonely. People were very lonely back then, and so VTubing just made sense, if that makes sense. It
Gotcha.
just, you have these essential. I mean, parasocial relationships. It comes very naturally with the territory, and we have parasocial relationships even outside of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but outside of that, we very much saw VTubers as a very natural way to kind of help with the need of loneliness, and so that's why with everyone having stay-at-home orders and being forced to stay home, it was a way to pass the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's why there was a big boom back in 2020. And I believe, as different circumstances come up, like if we had a recession, for example, and there's been a lot of recession fears going around with inflation being so bad and
Yep.
how different factors were going on. Um, if there was a recession, I think VTubing would be fine because people would have to stay at home and try to save money. People save that money and they're going to want to spend it somewhere, but they're going to be a lot more tight with that money. And
Mm-hmm.
so with something like content creation and VTubing filling that loneliness regardless, people are going to feel incentivized to spend on VTubers regardless. And so uh, like it's a very interesting industry that you know the depressing side is that we do feel help people with their loneliness and providing a sense of community to
Mm-hmm.
people. And so with that basic kind of understanding, um, I don't think VTubing is going anywhere, and things may look a lot different, and things may not be as easier. It still is oversaturated, despite a lot of people reaching year 3 with their streaming careers and graduating a lot this past year. I mean,
Uh-huh.
they were graduating a lot in 2021. There was a lot of graduations in 2020, 2022, and now for this year, I think it's more expressed because a lot of people are realizing, I have been with this individual in my friend group and for 3 years now, and now they're graduating, and I'm hearing nothing but that from different people, and it's all anecdotal. And so like there's a perception that there's a lot of like VTubing is dying, and I think quite the opposite. There's a lot more debuts happening more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more
Um.
people are getting into it, and it's becoming more and more accessible. And with inflation being as bad as it is, the demand for this type of stuff is only going up. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think I don't think people are actively like thinking about this kind of thing, but that's just kind of like the broader reality of it.
Mm-hmm. Perhaps they are maybe they're thinking of the differences of quality versus quantity of
Right,
VTubers.
because you have to. It feels like the ante has been raised, where you have to have higher and higher productions, more and more
Yeah.
expensive debuts, and also have higher quality debuts. Actually, have productions and start uploading to some other platform rather than just your main streaming platform. Like there is a lot more that creators have to keep in mind. If given that they're not like starters, if they have been in the game for a while and have like some sort of decent size, they do have to be more than just average. They have to specialize in something. They have to be interesting. And so the perception that a lot of people tend to have is like, what if I just, download OBS, get some free model, and just hit go live and play funny video game and have fun? Like, you can still do that, but the expectation to try to grow very quickly from that is long gone.
Hmm. Um, at least, I think we should just cover this question, at least, within what we're talking about right now. Why do you think, VTubing, attracts, queer folk?
Oh, I love this question because a lot of my clients are queer and have always been queer for 3 years, and I've gotten to know a lot of their stories. And so, um, the absolute biggest appeal to it is definitely gender expression. You can live through your OC essentially, and that's always been a thing. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like with me, the very start of my exploration of gender growing up was being able to use a female profile picture on some forum and in MySpace on Facebook, and that allowed me to try to live as a different gender, even if a little bit. But for VTubing, you're able to do a lot more, and for the most part, people respect what you're doing, and so there is a lot more very natural appeal to it because you're able to explore your gender and explore specifically a personalized version of it, if that makes sense. So, like,
Oh,
you have
absolutely.
your own custom model, and it looks a lot more like you have always imagined. You can look at the ideal, or you can have something more aligned with who you are. Um, or you can just live, haha, big anime titties, and or like,
Boings.
hey,
Boingus, yeah?
or like I'm a
Paganda
trans
dogs?
or I'm a trans man and I could look like a really hot dude.
Uh,
And you just do what it is you feel like you want to do, and you put in the commission and it happens. It's
mm-hmm.
it's because there's a lot more exceptions and no questions asked kind of mentality towards it. There's no gatekeeping involved with getting the models in the first place. And I think that's what really helps,
Mm-hmm.
because everywhere else in life, being queer is really gatekept. It's really stigmatized and discouraged. There's a lot of discrimination, both in social dynamics as well as legal and um, like healthcare access and stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of discrimination with that. So like trying
Mm-hmm.
to actually get like hormone therapy can be very difficult depending on where you live, especially with how bad things got this year with an increased attack on trans rights
Of
this
course.
earlier this year. And so living through VTubing is a way to experience what's called gender euphoria as opposed to gender dysphoria. Gender
Mm-hmm.
dysphoria is a mental health condition where your gender doesn't align with reality, with your perceived gender doesn't align with reality, with both how you actually see yourself and how others see you. And so you aim to transition both socially and medically, though it's not necessary to do medical transition. You could just have a social transition and be fine. But either way, everyone's a little different on that. And so with VTubing, it provides a gender euphoria, which is a very
Mm-hmm.
positive association and affirmation of that perceived gender identity. And
Mm-hmm.
so, um, if you're trans feminine, trans feminine, and even androgynous, it's very easy, especially with an anime aesthetic, to portray androgyny.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Hence why we have like a lot of femboys, for example, and we have a lot of other um, non-binary type of representation. And you could definitely just do what it is you feel is right, and if you work close enough with your artist, you can definitely make as close of a dream come true as you want. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that alone is the strongest thing. But I think what also keeps people around is just the density in which there's a lot of queer people. It's the same thing is true for furries, and always has been true for furry communities. Um, but VTubing, as people have joked for 3 years, VTubing feels like a different type of furry in a way. And so we have a lot of different, very obvious conflicts and a lot of different infighting that happens with queer people, and
As with any group, of course.
right. And there's the realization of like just because you're queer doesn't automatically mean you're going to get along. And so you end up finding people who just accept you either way, and you can find your own found family or and stuff like that. And so you can find there you can easily find a group that works for you. But as time has gone on as well, the downside is that because of how much drama there has been in the past 3 years, and it feels like there's just like the season finale type of level of drama in 2023, audiences and individuals have gone very weary and very tired from all of the conflict. And so there's a lot more fears and social anxiety that has been developed. Like for me, I've gotten canceled because of me having an autistic meltdown, and for how much people will instantly dogpile and try to demonize you so quickly and rip you to shreds, even though they don't know a single thing about you. It literally amplified and caused me to have more social anxiety than I've ever had in my life, to the point where I had to go to therapy for it. And so, like, a lot of people are closing their doors, and there's not a lot of chances to network as much anymore versus how it was in 2023. And so, trying to actually network, it's possible. It's just a lot more difficult and sparse these days. And so, if you're queer, there used to be a lot more queer Discord servers. And they used to be called LGBT tubing kind of thing, LGBT VTubers. And so there used to be all sorts of Discord servers and groups for that. And there still are groups, but they're more consolidated to very specific creators and very specific groups that are more oriented towards that. And even they all have their issues, whether it's obscurity or actual controversial issues. I'm not going to name names, but it definitely feels like there's a lot less space for queer people to congregate. But also at the same time, based on my experiences and seeing how these queer communities have risen and fell, all of them, it's just like you have all these infightings and a lot of people who come from very different stages of life, who come with all sorts of different issues. Trying to bring all these people together and expecting them all to get along is a very tall order to ask. Not everyone is at the same point of being mentally okay, being in very different physical situations. And so like trying, and even like for different queer people, they're at different points in their transition too. So it's like, for someone like me who's on HRT, I have a very different life experience than someone who hasn't transitioned and has only socially transitioned with VTubing. It's and you can see that there's a very real chance of different conflicts arising, and you'll never know. There'll be all sorts of different reasons, but the core issue really does come back to that, alongside with very just pure personal differences. And so like there's definitely pros and cons to all sorts of different marginalized groups, and so like you're gonna have these issues. And so yeah, there's a lot of queer people, but a lot of them are on their own these days.
My apologies, I just suddenly had a technical issue with my track. Oh, I'm far away now. Oh. There we go. I'm all good, I think.
It's okay.
Something's going on.
What's a VTuber stream without a little bit of scuff?
Exactly, I know, right? I'm closer to you now. Sheesh. How about we keep the talking going? And return at least go back to let's see your experience in managing VTubers. Um, I remember you mentioning you were also, or at least associated with. Actually, I think I can't really. I'm getting utterly distracted here. Maybe it's VC face that is messing me up now. All else fails, I just switch over to a.
So basically, you want to know where. I think you wanted to know more about like who I manage and stuff like that, and how things have
Um,
been going since I got started.
I suppose. Give me a moment. Uh, how about we start with. This is distracting. I'm gonna quickly switch to. Oh, I threw you out. Um, I'm just gonna quickly switch to my own thing here. No. What is it? Okay. You mentioned spending time with a few VTuber agencies. With one as a creative director. Now, I know you don't want to discuss this much, especially the drama, but would it be more doable to note how you got the position? Explain the duties of your role and how long you spent at.
So
Um,
the
of course, insofar as the
the
NDA.
agency was Hero Factory, and it was a they reached out to me and asked if I wanted to join their team, and they had been keeping an eye on me for a while and sending out feelers and understanding if I was right for the role, and then just suddenly reached out to me for an interview, and I accepted. And a lot of my role as creative director involved handling the branding of the company, handling applications as well, doing a lot of the um, I didn't. I tended to not involve myself in the actual interview process of things, but I definitely had a really big input on people's applications
Uh,
themselves and the application videos, and so sifting through hundreds of them, I found a lot of very talented individuals who were right for that. It was a tabletop RPG themed company, and so I'm not gonna disparage or give too much detail about the drama or anything, but to summarize, there were internal issues that I did not want to involve myself in, and I decided to resign and try to focus more on myself and my business more. I had been spending a lot of time with the company and trying to make sure it succeeded, um, but that's just kind of where things left off. And so um, I had been putting the company on a trajectory for success and very explosive growth, and did a lot of networking, um, and brand sponsorships and partnerships. And um, that's what a lot of my work entailed, and just building connections for that. And so for me, I had I did a lot of work there, and um, I at the end of the day, the time there wasn't. Uh, I don't want to get into what it was like on a day to day, but that's essentially
gotcha.
what happened. And
Gotcha.
so, in terms of other agencies I've worked with, there's one project with a client that I can't get into due to NDA,
Done.
but it's Idlecore.
Mm-hmm.
They also reached out to me to manage their new generation of talent, but I also felt like it wasn't for me as well. And again, one I had recently resigned from. Um, well, I was still with Hero Factory at the time, and was thinking of resigning either way to focus on my business. And so all in all, I just wanted to focus on myself. And so
Gotcha.
um, it wasn't anything wrong with them or anything. It just wasn't good timing for me. And
Mm.
so I still work on a project with them and hope to work more with with other agencies like Idol and I hope someday like um, Hololive as well. You know, someday. That's kind of a
Knock on
goal.
wood.
Yeah,
Knock on wood. Yeah. Um,
I really look up to Achan from Hololive.
Anchan. Hmm.
Achan,
Achan.
yeah,
Huh.
Achan is she's a creative director at Hololive, and
Oh, now I remember. Okay, yeah, yeah.
yeah, she
Yeah,
was
yeah.
she's really good friends with Tokunosora, their first talent, and she helped start the company. And she's a really big role model for me.
Mm. Um,
As for other organizations that I've worked with. There's been other various VTuber groups. I don't want to really get into those either because of the
all right,
nature of the
done.
work. But I had helped consult their clients, and it's just been an ongoing thing of me helping different groups throughout my 3 years,
Mm.
um, and just consulting all their clients to help them grow. And so that is one thing under my belt.
All right. I don't know if this can be discussed, but what was the actually first and foremost while you were actually should we dwell on your experience in Hero Factory too much, especially in regards to your experience with the talents, if you have any?
So the interview process didn't really conclude, and it's still concluding to
Gotcha,
my knowledge. So I hadn't been able to work with any of the talents except one of them. They were
gotcha.
more focusing on ASMR content, and it was
Oh,
just
I
like
see.
working with any other of my clients. So like, there's nothing really special to write home about with it.
Oh, I see. Okay, now I understand. Okay.
Yeah, so like I work with different levels of creators, whether they're um, small and or just pre-debut and beginning, or
Um.
even partners of decent size,
Hmm.
and handling different levels of production, whether it's like a very low budget quick debut, or it's a
And structure, like not so much in your like your income. I'm more looking at did you if you needed to file a W-2, um
oh, for taxes.
yeah, yeah.
So I
Like how did they
file
pay you, so to speak, also.
the agencies.
I suppose yeah, yeah,
I
that's
simply
yeah.
invoice them through Stripe, and just like any
Oh.
other client that I work with, big, small, or anything. Usually now I process people through VGen,
Uh,
um, which also processes through my Stripe. Either way, um, I basically send out customized invoices to agencies, and then I take the those invoices through Stripe's taxation features, and then I personally file a 1099 NEC, which is for freelancers.
um hmm. When did you want to start freelancing as a manager?
So I had to like pause and think about that one.
Go ahead.
So actually, like thinking about it, I think that was 2020 because that's when the moment I first took my first consultation was when it started. But actually, like fully on taking it at scale at a bigger scale, that would have been November 22nd, or November 2022, on basically last year's Black Friday sale. Really took the fuck off, and like I got a lot of clients and made a lot of money there, and I was like, oh shit, I need an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Like before, like I was getting a lot of clients beforehand anyways, but it was more sporadic and spread out. But after last year's Black Friday sale, it really started putting me on the map with a lot of different people, and my mother is my accountant actually, and she has cancer now, so like I have to probably find someone else this upcoming tax season. But
Gotcha.
she had helped me organize my mess of it was a total mess, my taxes, and so
Uh,
like we had to file an extension for it because of how much there was, and so that was really when my business really took off. Other than that, it was like very, like I said, sporadic, and I wasn't making a whole lot versus
mm,
how I do now. Again, I am not rich. I basically have like a working class salary. Like
I gotcha.
it's nothing to sing home about.
Mm.
It gets the bills paid. Let's just
I
say
guess a
that.
bit. Yeah, it's subsistence.
Yeah, it's a subsistence income, and
Mm,
so trying to get that all organized in taxes was a nightmare because of how many, like, I process people through coffee. I have income on Patreon. I've diversified my income as well, so it's like trying to get all of that consolidated into something was kind of a nightmare. And
mm,
so now that it's all organized, it should be a lot easier moving forward. But yeah, last year was when it all got started, and
mm.
I invoice individuals as well as agencies.
How many clients did you accrue during your first year freelancing?
Whew, that's a good question.
Like, if you can guess a number right
So
now.
I basically had like 6 months to really work with in terms of that for 2020. I would say it was around a few dozen.
Few dozen?
That's me actually just kind of like guesstimating.
Uh,
Um, but then the total of 2021 was like another like 50 to 75 people, and then 2022 started really ramping up those numbers in the
uh,
hundreds.
oh boy,
Yeah, yeah.
what a mess. Um,
It's enough work for an entire agency, but I was handling it all alone.
yeah.
And
Uh,
it was only recently that I started getting an assistant this year, very early this year. And so with 2023, um, I wouldn't say I have like 300 or anything. Like 3 to 400 is like the total that I have. And so I had quite a lot of people this year as well, like maybe like anywhere from 150, like about
mm,
150 ish new
and
clients this year. And so like um being able to handle all that, now that I've gotten my shit together a lot more, um it's been a it's been a big learning experience. And
mm,
the biggest thing that's changed has been my times, especially with learning that, hey, I'm actually a night owl, so like adjusting my schedule. Like the today's stream started at 2 p.m. I usually wake up at 1 p.m. I quickly get breakfast and then I start my day. And that's like 2 to 8 o'clock. Whereas before, I started the day at 11, then ended at 8. So I definitely used to have longer days. And Jesus Christ, I was doing a lot of goddamn work. And so now I'm trying to size down and space out how much work I actually do, so that I don't crash and burn. I differentiate burnout versus crashing and burning. Um, but yeah, that's essentially what's changed since then.
mm. How many clients have stuck around? Um, you mentioned that you had about 100 clients at one point, but how many
Well,
of them
that's
became
like all
permanent?
spread out. That's like all spread out, and so like I would be handling both consultation and management clients at any given
Gotcha.
time, and so I think at any given time that would be, because like for me, for management slots I have a total of 12, because that's the utmost I can actually handle behind the scenes with actual management work. That would include like project management. That would include um, in depth kind of meetings to actually produce videos and actually help improve streams in more excruciating detail at any given time, and do video reviews and look at YouTube Studio at the, or like help them with their PR issues at the dead of night. That's what I do for management, and I find that I can only handle about 12 people at once, um,
Gotcha.
which is a lot more than most people. And
A lot
I'm
of
not trying,
juggling.
it's a lot of juggling, and I definitely had struggled because I used to take on a lot more. I used to take on like 15, 20 people at any given time for management. And I started learning, oh, wow, my limits are a lot less. And so that's where I landed on 12 right now.
Mm,
Um, and so with consultation clients, I would be juggling another like 20 because for those are more periodic versus management, which is like um, every single day except
mm,
my off days, which is about twice a week. So 5 days a week of either DMing or actually having weekly meetings with people um, for the periodic consultation clients. Like they'll meet with me once for the onboarding, then I'll wait 2 weeks to meet with them again to look over data. Then I'll meet with them for another 2 weeks, then a month, then another month, then like once a quarter, which is every 3 months. And so that's how I'm able to juggle a lot of people because I have that kind of spaced out structure. And
mm,
so it also literally makes sense because I need to actually let data accumulate. And so for me, I very much had to organize my business that way. And so um, I'm able to handle 12 management clients and then probably like another 20 to 25 consultation clients at any given time. Um, I don't put strict slots on my consultations. I just let them happen when they happen
all right.
um, because I'm able to space them all out. And I don't have to barge them all in super tightly. I can space out when I schedule with them. And so I've started learning time management a lot better in the past year. And so um, that's how I'm able to handle so many people.
Mm. Uh, I think we have time for at least a few more. Um, how do you how do you manage your clients who are your friends compared to those that you have more of a work relationship with?
Oh, that's interesting because like I have a work relationship with literally everyone, whether they're friends, even my girlfriend Yumi.
Yeah.
Um, like I will be able to separate the two. It's really hard with Yumi because she's my girlfriend. So like that's been an ongoing struggle all for the past 2 years. I've been dating her for 2 years, and so and back when I started, I also was in a polycule, so managing those people that was a lot harder for me. Um, Trying to work with all that, and so those relationships didn't work out, and so now with Yumi, um, she's very very patient with me, and so she'll
Gotcha.
usually catch me at the end of the day to maybe look over her analytics and stuff. And on off days I will spend maybe like 4 to 5 hours with her on average to look over her stuff holistically because she's a much different creator than most people, and so she requires extra time.
Mm.
But for everyone else, I end up becoming friends with a lot of my clients. And with something like management, you have to be very hands on and very attentive to their needs. And so I also advertise that I offer emotional support. So, like, I have a lot of clients at any given time venting to me all the time. And so it's hard not to get close in that as at least friends. And so for me, I personally don't put a strict boundary on term in terms of friendship. Um, but I do at least tell them like, hey, I will I want you to tell me what's on your mind. If there's any issues, let me know and I will get to you when I'm able to. I at least put that much of a boundary up. And so in terms of professional, it's weird because like when you're in a management role, you need the customer service. And so for me, understanding how VTubers are, it's it's like business casual with an emphasis on casual, if that makes sense. So right now we're both kind of yeah, we're a bit casual, but it's mostly formal. But for me,
Mm.
I will be laughing my ass off. I will be joking with them. I'll be complimenting them and be like, "Oh, you look really good today," or like, "Oh, like you did a really good job on this. I'm really proud of you." And just be very casual like that. And people tend to respond a lot better because working with clients, I need them to not have their walls up. I need them to be able to trust me so that I can actually help them. And so that they don't make any rash decisions. Like if they're currently in a controversy, I'm able to work with them step by step, and they can trust me to be able to handle sensitive information. And so it's a very interesting thing that I also have a disagreement on with other VTuber managers with how to handle clients and how close one should be. Um, a lot of people tend to be a lot more um, extra professional, very
Gotcha.
buttoned down. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just not my way of doing things. My brain, my autism, my ADHD, and just the way my personality is, I don't like working like that. I very much would prefer being someone's friend rather than not, because I find that the work chemistry works out a lot better than that. And people, there has been times where I don't get along with someone because they just don't give me much to work with. They don't really socialize very well. And I'm trying to, I try my best to make sure the chemistry is there. And that one would think that that would mean less clients, but on the contrary, most people end up opening up, and I find a lot of success with that.
Hmm. Of course, appearances are good. You need to have a good reputation with people.
Well, there's that, but also like you can tell I'm very personable, very charismatic, but also
Of course.
very soft and soothing voice. That is a very
Hmm.
big thing that keeps people calm.
You're not
And
the intimidating wall.
yeah, yeah, and so I think people call me motherly oftentimes, and but more specifically, one of my clients has said, you're not exactly the mom. You're more of the cool aunt that people can talk to."
Hmm.
And so for that is a good way of describing me. I'm more like the cool aunt that people can confide in.
Hmm. How do you envision the growth and evolution of your content and channel in the future?
So right now I am trying to fit in streaming once a week when I can. Um, and try to fit in collabs another day of the week, because a lot of people want to collab with me, so I have to space that out. Um, but for now, what I'm doing is I'm just kind of covering topics on my stream, having a just chatting stream, and then putting up the VOD for other people to watch. And I timestamp it so people can watch what they want to watch. What I want my channel to eventually grow into is something equivalent to like Khan Academy and Crash Course, where I'm covering different topics, and it's more scripted and much more. If you want to learn about marketing, I want to not just provide a free marketing course, but I want to provide one that's catered specifically towards content creation and VTubing as well. And
Hmm.
so I personally like I specialize with handling VTubers, but I'm also not afraid of handling what we call flesh tubers. So regular content creators who are not VTubers. Because there's a growing trend that I actually strongly approve of is VTubing has a very idol inspired culture to it and
Oh yeah.
expectations. And so I think it's a lot healthier for a lot of people to realize, hey, there's another path of doing things. And if you want to call yourself a creator with an avatar, then just do that. And even further, I'm encouraging more and more people to vlog. And so I myself want to practice what I preach as well. And so I want to vlog more as well, to talk about stuff like mental health, to talk about um, stuff like what we're talking about right now, my journey with it, and weave that into whatever I'm talking about to give it a sort of story and give it a relatability that otherwise would be extremely buttoned down academic, like the educational videos would be. Except for me, I'm going to be a lot more joking and lighthearted with it because for me, I just don't really vibe with the hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about how to start a channel and here's how you grow. First of all, you're going to do this, that, and the other.
You're
I'm
gonna have to buy a $1 million piece of firework displays.
You're going to have to buy yourself a PC, but I'm going to give you the budget versions. That's not
Hmm.
me. For me, I want to be a lot more personable, a
Gotcha.
lot more authentic. And so That's where my channel is more going to go towards. And I hope the more that I'm able to build that up, I want to be able to bring on like experts onto my content. And so if I'm talking about burnout, if I'm talking about mental health, I want to bring on like an actual psychiatrist or behavioral scientist and
Mhm.
actually be able to talk about that live on air or on a video. I want to be able to um, have legitimate advice that people can actually walk away with, because I know how inaccessible therapy is, and I know for a goddamn fact that content is not a replacement for therapy, but I think
Yeah.
it's a good start. And I want to be able to provide that alongside with other topics of things, because like I know that online education isn't for everyone. And so for me, my methodology with teaching is not going to involve like quizzes, essays, or crap like that. It has to be done with experience. And so I want to be able to provide case studies to people and be able to provide actual actionable paths that people can take. Like if, for example, in a video I'm talking about how to make a brand, and I'm also like if I have a course on branding, and I further brand that down for VTubers specifically, like how to make your character design actually something that people will care about and actually reflects you and your personality. I want to bring on someone who's well known for making models. I want to be able to work with them on a structured video like that. So that way, we're actually having some sort of academic rigor to it. So that way, you're not relying on some Joe Schmo with some tutorial that's half baked. I want some academic rigor in my education.
Nice. Nice. Good. Good.
Because
I
I
assume
mean,
you. I assume you know.
you probably looked up
I.
tutorials yourself, and you're like, this wasn't fucking helpful. All the advice was
Sure.
generic as hell, and so I want to be able to provide to put back in academic rigor while also having it be more practical at the same time. And I think that I would be able to provide that.
I'm betting you're going to provide APA citations to every video that you
No,
provide.
I am not doing APA
I'm
citations.
just letting you know. I'm just letting you know that Chicago style is the superior citation format, and I
Bitches
would
in high
recommend
school
that.
be teaching me MLA, proceeds to never use MLA in college, only APA, and I'm just like, huh, all those classes were useless in high school.
Mm-hmm.
I wasted years of my life in English learning MLA only to never use it again. I love
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Awesome. Um.
That's also something I don't want to do. Like when I'm making these educational videos, I actually want practical skills that will stick with you and are easy to implement rather than just useless information that is very situational at best, like academic citation
Mm-hmm.
or I want to say trigonometry because that's the stereotype, but actually when it comes to like rigging, I've actually had clients use calculus and rigging, making actual formulas to make certain things work in Live 2D and Blender. So like I'm not going to discount math. I think math is an actual practical skill with VTubing, especially if you're trying to make models. But for most creators,
That
you're not
that
going to need
that
math. But if
that
you're a
was not
rigger,
on my
yes.
fucking that was not on my bingo card. That calculus was used to create
Yeah, just think about how
a big
advanced
titty
rigging
mommy
has
Gia.
got with
Okay.
just think about how advanced things have gone with rigging
Yeah.
and how much shit goes in, like how much animation is in it. So like
Mm-hmm.
some of these people are like actually innovating and they're like, huh, I can't find jack and shit on what it is I want to do. No forums have any kind of inclination on it. So you know what? I'm just gonna like pull out pen and paper, make a fucking formula, a calculus formula,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna plug it into Live 2D and test it to see if it works or not, adjust it, and then test it, and then boom, a new effect is made for this specific model.
All right. Hopefully they get around to doing that with armor pieces. Um. No, really. I used to. I raid a somewhat big VTubers model a couple of years ago, And when he provided references to what the armor scene is with Life 2D rigging, it kind of utterly disappointed me to how inflexible and how stiff everything was. Compared to, I hate to toot my own horn, to what I've done.
Completely fair. I'm sure you had
There's a
more
lack of-
questions, and I want to make sure you have a very strict timetable. So I want to make sure that we're back on topic.
Oh no, we're just wrapping up right now. There was definitely stuff that I couldn't get into because of our time constraints.
Any other questions for the deep gut punch? Anything that is really pertinent?
Why do you exist?
I exist because fuck you. That's why.
All right. Are there any projects or I suppose, what is it? Content or ideas, people you want to put out there or advertise at the end of this?
So right now, I want to promote my client's debut. Her name is Eden. We mentioned her briefly. She's been trying this. She's been preparing for this debut for 2 years, like commissioning people 2 years ago to make this thing work. And the strategy I put out for her is working out like a charm, and I want to see her happy and succeed. And her debut is on. Let me actually pull it up. It's on my calendar. November 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you're not able to make that, she's offering a second debut as well for people of different time zones at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the 26th. And so that's the thing I have to promote the most right now. And as for my own content, I stream every Tuesday at 4 p.m. EST.
All right. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling really hungry.
All right. You should get that dealt with. Feed your stomach.
Hungry.
Fill your gasket or fill your car with fuel. There we go. All right, everybody. We will be concluding this episode of the show. Thank you very much for coming to the stream or the VOD. Thank you, Tessa, for your time. You chatters and VOD watchers will be able to find links to her socials down in the description below. Check her out, like, subscribe, and yeah, have a good time, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.